We're back. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Witch's Movie Coven. Yes, live and nationwide. We want you guys to comment. We want you guys to join in. We're three witches talking about witch movies. I am Patti Negri. I am your host for today. I've been practicing pagan witch for as long as I can remember. And let me tell you about my two co-hosts. We have Heather Greene, the amazing Heather Greene, also a witch and the author of the book on witches and witches movie, Lights, Camera, Action. I don't know if you have your book right there. Lights, Camera, Witchcraft, everything about every witch movie ever made. And of course, we have Jason Mankey, which also author of some amazing books, like the Witch's Book of Spellcraft, or something like that, and Horn God, all sorts of really great books. So these are beautiful, beautiful, educated, fun people who also like movies and popcorn. So this week, last week we talked about 90s movies. We talked about practical magic, and we talked about The Craft. And this week we're moving up a decade or so. We're moving into the 2000s, right? And this week, if you guys, any of you watched it, if you got your homework from our Facebook page, we're going to talk about the Blair Witch Project, which I think is more amazing as time goes by, and Darkness Falls, which a lot of you may or may not know, and of course, The Conjuring, which everybody knows. So I guess why don't we start out with, in chronological order, as Jason suggested, the Blair Witch Project. I don't know, Heather, do you want to start with this?
Sure. The Blair Witch Project was a really low budget film that did phenomenally well. And what's really cool about it is that it sort of changed everything for witch films and just for movies in general, because it was presented and set up to be real. People went to the movies thinking this was found footage, thinking it was real. There was even a a pseudo documentary, a mockumentary called The Curse of the Blair Witch Project, which proposed that it was real. So people saw that. And it was also handy cam, so it moved around a lot. People got sick. They didn't know what to do with it. So it was revolutionary from a film technical perspective, but it also was so popular that it launched just a good decade of, or at least 8 or 10 years worth of ghost witch films. It brought that scenario back. We got a lot of ghost witches happening in the 2000s. So it did a lot for witch movies. It did a lot for film in general in 1999. Seems like an era ago, a year, decades and decades. It is.
Yeah, and I remember loving it at the time when it came out. I wasn't quite sure of the shaky cam, and I'm like, it is so different. But I even, as somebody just wrote it there, I'm even more amazed now how it has held up and how it became. I mean, I'm in reality ghost television, and how much this was a precursor to so much of, we're out there and we're doing it and it's real. Even though theirs wasn't real, we didn't know that, or we weren't sure. So I think with time, it even holds up even more.
Yeah. I'm the outlier. I don't like the Blair Witch Project.
And I love that you're so often the outlier.
I know. And I remember being really excited about seeing it. And I saw it in the theater when it first came out. And I was taken instantly out of the movie because the young woman in the film who, was in charge of the whole project is supposed to be a journalist. And she would ask these questions that were 2 paragraphs long, and then the people she was asking the questions to could answer yes or no. Having studied journalism in college, I was like, that's not journalism. And all of a sudden I was like, well, obviously she's not a journalist and this isn't real. And it ruined everything for me. I guess I'm way too picky about certain things.
That is funny. I never would have at all gone there with that. That is funny.
No, I liked it. I thought it would. I was a film student, so I was fascinated. I knew it wasn't real, and I was fascinated with the use of the actual the technology. That's what just was like, look what they're doing. Look how they're manipulating the film technology, and look how they're actually manipulating the viewers. And like you said, Patty, it's a precursor to reality television, which started. I believe it's just like a year later is when Survivor started in 2000. So it was right on the back of reality television and moving on from that. So it to me, it was just absolutely fascinating watching the manipulation. I knew it wasn't real, so that was wasted on me, actually.
Yeah, I didn't. When I watched it, I didn't know if that it wasn't real. I absolutely didn't know. And I felt what they felt. So whatever she was, maybe she was a bad journalist, you knew she wasn't a journalist. I felt that terror, because that's what I get now when I do that real reality TV, and it is ghost TV. If I'm going into, like, say, Ghost Adventure, I don't know what I'm getting into. I don't know what it is. And I just so related to all those emotional places of this. I don't know what is happening here. So that speaks a lot for their, even performance ability to do that. Cause I just went, it just related so much to me. We were just talking about this before we went on air. Somebody just said that they think it was based on a real witch, and we were talking egregores and stuff. Let's go to that. Was there a real Blair Witch?
I don't believe so. I think that was made up. There was supposedly a Bell Witch in Tennessee. I don't know if Jason, you know more about, I didn't really study that history, and there was a movie made on the Bell Witch, but I don't think there was actually a Blair Witch. I think that might have been a legend tripping thing, but it didn't actually exist. That's what I understand.
Growing up in Tennessee, like I did, the Bell Witch myth was one of those things where you went into a dark room at midnight with a mirror in it, and you had to say, "I hate the Bell Witch" 3 times, and then she would come through the mirror and scratch your nose or something. And I'd had friends who would do this and then run out of the bathroom screaming, she touched me," which means they probably scratched their own nose. However, you don't know for sure, and it was a big legend. I don't think the Blair Witch was a real witch at the time. However, that area in New Jersey is creepy, and people go and look for the Blair Witch now. And I think it's sort of taken on a life of its own. I think if you go into the woods looking for the Blair Witch, you might discover something that's quite unsettling, even if it's not necessarily based on a historical truth or fact.
And
Well,
I
we
think
create.
that, go ahead.
Go on. No, I was going to say, we create spirits all the time.
Absolutely.
And I think that's part of what happens in the Blair Witch Project. The movie itself, there is no witch. And I talk about this in my book. That movie never shows you a witch. It never tells you whether she exists or not. It isn't until later movies where they actually solidify that the concept that she did exist. In the first movie, they never show you the witch. They never show you what happened. There is no witch. It's just a legend. And I think that goes along with what you were saying, Jason. I remember the 90s, there was a lot of legend tripping going on. It's a big thing for teens to go legend tripping. I went legend tripping. We went to try to, we had to drive, and I'm from New Jersey, drive around this tower 3 times backwards at midnight. And if you did, you can conjure the devil. I mean, these are the kind of things like you were talking about with the Bell Witch, and there's a ton of them like that. And after this movie, there was a lot of movies made about these legend ghost witches that become real.
Right. And as Hannah says right there, thank you, Hannah Davenport. Yeah, that's what we're saying, that we create so much. I think the legend that a Ouija board has, we completely have created that through media, through TV. It was just a communication device until we turned it all evil. So, so what do you guys think about the witchy things and it coming from a witchy, the things that they would find in front of their tents?
Go ahead, Jason.
I think back to Boy Scout camp when I was a kid and the kind of pranks that we would play on each other. I mean, it was kind of creepy and weird. I'll give it that. They did a nice job setting up the atmosphere of those sort of things. I never thought what they encountered was all that creepy, other than being completely lost and walking in circles and not making any progress. That would have really freaked me out, more so than the little doll things and little twigs and stuff. to me, that would have just been somebody probably messing with me.
Really? See, that was scary to me. Again, maybe because I'm so elemental in my stuff, and if I'm going to find that out in the middle of the woods, that's scary. It worked for me.
It is a scary movie, and I think what Courtney just said is the unknown of everything, and going deeper and deeper into that woods, into where it's dark and it's more wild, and there's, you know, whether you're circling in woods or finding those little twig symbols, it gets creepier and creepier, and your mind goes wild and starts creating that energy, which is magic too. What is it? Egregores and whatnot.
Yeah, and creating it. Definitely spooky. Yeah, good words for it. Definitely spooky.
Yep.
And the controversy of how it was shot was so interesting. The shaky camera. I remember this was a long time ago. I was with somebody who was like, "I'm getting dizzy. I don't like this." It's like, but you experience it like that. Did it? So.
So I had friends who got sick. They had to leave. They couldn't do the shaky cam at all. It didn't bother me at all. It added to the tension of the movie. But
I'll admit that I was nauseous when it was done, and so was my wife, which might cloud my feelings about the movie. And even watching it at home, it's still like my stomach goes, "This is tough." Right? It doesn't sit well with me because of the shaky cam. But the shaky cam does add to the atmosphere and makes it look much more real, because that is probably how we would all react if we were dealing with something like that. It's just to watch.
Completely. And I think that reminds me, again, now that I do reality TV, which is real, and I go into crazy haunted places and experience crazy haunted things, you do get nauseous. You do get all those same things. I mean, that's the experience you have if you're going into dark spirits and dark entities, or where the veil is up. That's exactly how you feel. Terror and nausea. They kind of go hand in hand. So it's like, maybe that I didn't even think of that's why it went into it. But that's the kind of stuff I am thrown into on a regular basis. I love it and I love the Blair Witch Project because it's the challenge of it all. It's the challenge.
Do you also get that claustrophobic sense that the movie had when you're doing your shows? I've never done one of those before. And that movie showed this sort of, the camera was very claustrophobic. Do you get that sense of claustrophobia when you're doing your work?
Completely, because it is way darker than it looks on television. Night vision cameras make it look like it's kind of blue-gray, not flattering ever, but it's actually, you are so often in pitch dark. So we may not be lost in the woods and not knowing where we're going, but you have this zero sense of place, zero sense of where you're going. And all you have is blackness around you. So you guys are explaining to me why this movie is so scary to me right now, which I hadn't even put those together. I just read that. I like that Margarita right there. She watched the movie before it was a known fact of being fake. She was terrified for her nephews and went home and made them sleep next to you. See, I love when a movie can do that.
It is. They can do so much to us, and this one didn't scare me, but there's other ones that just much later, other ones that just change you. I mean, they can affect you and your dreams, and your fears. It's amazing.
So what do you guys think? Again, even techniques besides all the shaky camera, is it real? Is it not real? You really never saw anything really scary. You never saw a witch. You never saw a monster. You didn't see a dead body. It's what you didn't see, which seems so much scarier in that film, took it to the nth degree, in my experience.
Yeah. Brilliant filmmaking. That's what we call that.
The psychological is much better than a splatterfest. I would rather have something that scares me here than it's just a bunch of jump scares. Or grisly murders, right? I don't need that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And on that note, and thank you guys for all you're putting in all your thoughts on this. This is great. This is exactly what we want. We want your input. We want your thoughts. So this is good. Somebody's like, the Australian Warlock. Hi, Australian Warlock, from far, far away, wherever you are. a massive found footage fan, and yeah, whether it's real or not, I guess I am too. So speaking of jump scares, why should we move into our second movie, which again, people may or may not know, but to me, it's a movie of jump scares. Darkness Falls. Heather, again, since you are the expert on such thing, do you want to talk about that one a little bit?
Sure. So Darkness Falls is a joint Australian and US film. And this gets into where we're just talking about the turning of a legend into something scary. In this case, it's the Tooth Fairy. And it came out in 2003, I believe. And it was apparently has a following. And one of the reasons we thought it would be a good one is because it kind of rests in that period of time where a lot of ghost witch films were coming out. And this is, again, one of them. And what's interesting to me about this one, even if it's not one of the critically acclaimed movies like Blair Witch Project, is that there was this sort of popularity of these films where this person, usually a woman, gets killed and tried and killed for being a witch 100 years ago, typically 300 years ago, and then comes back for revenge. And you see that story narrative over and over in the early 2000s after the Blair Witch Project. Darkness Falls is just one of them. The Conjurer is another one. The Tooth Fairy, not the comedy. This is the 2006 Tooth Fairy is another one, and we see it over and over again. So that's what's really interesting. And this is an age-old American narrative of the woman who dies as a witch and comes back to haunt the living.
So that's interesting. I've not seen the Tooth Fairy, which I will have to, but is there a legend, real or not real, to this, whatever this movie is, or to the Tooth Fairy? Is there a witchy connect? To me, when I was a kid, the Tooth Fairy just gave you money. There was nothing scary attached to it. I'm like,
I don't believe so. Just to answer that question, what this falls into is what we see later, where we start to see them doing this, what we call dark fantasy and fractured fairy tales, where they start taking our treasured childhood stories and twisting them. That's what this is. I don't think these are real legends.
Okay.
I looked around after watching Darkness Falls, trying to see if there was any truth to what I had just seen. And there was nothing indicating that it was based on like a real historical figure, unlike the last movie that we'll talk about with Conjuring. That's a whole different story. But this all seemed to be kind of made up. And it also seems sort of like nonsensical in a way, like the whole idea of like having to keep the mask over her face was going to burn, and shining flashlights on her is really going to hurt her. You know, it was a very different sort of movie.
Yeah. It falls into that just rash of movies capitalizing on the success of Blair Witch and the Ghost Witch.
Yeah.
Really different though, in that they loved to show this figure. Like when you're watching Darkness Falls, the witch figure is something that everyone sees. None of it's psychological. She's very much real and present, and she has a very physical presence, which I found quite strange for a ghost. I'm watching this with my wife last night, and I'm like, how does the ghost touch people? I've been touched by a ghost, but not like being picked up and thrown around with hands and stuff. It felt like maybe she was like a zombie ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Zombies.
maybe she was a zombie ghost. We'll have to do that another time. Is there zombie witch movies? I don't know.
Movies.
Is there zombie witch movies?
I don't know. Yeah, I think there are. Yes, I think there are. I'm going to have to get back to you on a list.
Okay, we might have to do that one. If you guys want that one, let us know. Zombie witch movies, if they exist, or should they exist? Yeah, and to me, that seemed like a very jump scare movie. That's what I said. There they come. There she is again, which is fun too. I'm the queen of getting scared to death by somebody saying boo. So that's just me.
It's a different type of horror. It's a totally different type of horror. It has the jump scare, which is Blair Witch was psychological. Darkness Falls is not, like I said, a critically acclaimed movie, but it's a different way. These ghost witches, this kind of lore of the witch being this woman seeking revenge. I think that's a narrative for witches in movies across the board. In fact, the first movie in Hollywood that did that story was actually a male witch, interesting enough, And it comes from Nathaniel Hawthorne, The House of Green Gables. If you know the story, if you read it, it was done as a movie in 1910. And so that's the first ghost witch we have who comes back. He's killed for being a witch. And then he comes back to haunt the people that took his home from him. And that's the first time we see that. Most of them are women who have been killed for one reason or another. And it's the story of that accused woman coming back and getting even.
Ooh, we're going to have to do that one too. So why do you think that this has a following, or like a cult following of some sort, if it wasn't that well known of a movie, and maybe it was or wasn't that great of a movie?
I would guess it's a horror movie. Jump scare horror does that.
I think it has a great soundtrack, and not just the score of the movie, but some of like the rock songs and stuff fit into a very specific period of post-grunge, alternative kind of emo, maybe a dash of electronica in their music. And I found myself like really loving everything that they played and like Shazamming all the songs on my phone. So, I mean, I almost would watch it again just to listen to some of the songs, which sounds really silly.
No, good point, because I did notice that too. It's like, oh, I love that song. It's like,
what's funny is that in revisiting this movie, I had to separate it out from the Tooth Fairy because I was confusing which one was which, because they're both about a murderous Tooth Fairy ghost witch. And I remembered getting to the Tooth Fairy, and the Tooth Fairy I liked better for its jump scares. And I remember I yell at the screen when I'm watching these kind of movies. I'm one of those people who yells at the screen during horror movies. Stop! Don't! And I started laughing. I'm like, oh, that was those movies. I was yelling at the screen during these movies. So it's fun. Bad horror some can be really fun too. I think there's a great question that just came up on the screen. We might want a really quick answer. Maybe Jason wants to field it. Isn't another word for male witch a warlock?
There are people, I think, in the witchcraft community who identify as warlocks, who are male, but most witches who are male probably just identify as witch. But use whatever word works for you. It's all good.
yeah, what I've heard that there is a few people trying to reclaim it as because in the witchy world it's always been a negative word. Yep. Like boy witches were male witches, and it meant some kind of traitor or something. But I know there's a couple people out there who are trying to reclaim it as a positive word, like the word queer, like the word different things. But I don't know very many people who are buying into it so far. So, but
just a small handful.
Yeah. But very good question. Thank you. Too much stigma. Okay, so the awoken one. I like the subject of witches and magic. Sadly, there is too much stigma, disinformation, and scorn of Satanism thrown towards witchcraft. And we were talking, let's talk about the Satanic Panic and all that. I mean, if this one, we've moved out of that a little bit from the movies the decade before. Let's address that. Good question. Awoken one.
Yeah, no, that's a great question because we're in a different period than we were last week, and we talked about the Satanic Panic. It ended pretty much by mid 90s. Of course, there's remnants, and it didn't fully die as we can see today. It's reaping, or not reaping. It's rearing its ugly head in many ways. But by this period of time, by the 2000s, we started to see really positive attempts at representing witches and witchcraft, specifically Wicca. Especially on television, you see a lot of that in and I talk about this in my book. For some reason, like law shows and police shows, legal shows, for example, and other things like that. TV shows were really trying to make that difference between witchcraft, Satanism, and Wicca. Wicca was the good thing. Oh, that's Wicca. It's a religion. It's peaceful. It's nature. And then there's witchcraft, which is, we're not so sure. And then there's Satanism, which is bad. So it was starting to make these differentiations. It was also calling Wicca a religion with rights for the first time. So 2000s really saw a change in the way witches were presented. That being said, we never lose the old stuff. We just gain new stuff. So you're going to see the black cats and the kitsch and the Satanism and all that stuff, along with the good representation. We never lost the other stuff either. We're out of Satanic Panic, though. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
We were talking about Blair Witch earlier, and the second Blair Witch movie that everyone hates, Book of Shadows. There's a Wiccan character in there, and she's not treated badly. She's just another character. This just happens to be what she believes and what she does. Though I think she does die before everyone else. So
Kill the witch first.
They wear yellow shirts like on Star Trek or something.
Yeah.
But it felt like in the late 90s, early 2000s that there were a lot of really positive portrayals, especially of Wicca. You know, sometimes just a little fleeting glance, but it was better than nothing by a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
And you know,
go ahead.
No, go.
No, I was going to say, in a lot of those shows that I was talking about that are representing that showed Wicca were actually doing the ghost stories too. You had Bones did one called oh gosh, I can't remember, something about the witch without a head or something. I can't remember the title of it, but there was series, and there was a bunch of those series that they had where it was Blair Witch style, but they actually made the difference between Wicca and witchcraft and Satanism. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Erica was thank you. Oh, somebody was obsessed with her. Erica is the character who was the Wiccan. I was obsessed. I'm going to have to re-watch that movie too. I can only do, 3 movies at a time. My little brain. The U.S. military reckon, yes, they do. They have, there's been many leaps and bounds from like the burning years or whatever you want to call those. Very much so. And media has something to do with that. All media. Even when we're badly portrayed, at least we exist, and then we can create. So anyway, what I was moving on to from that is moving on to this being a smaller movie to something else, to one that isn't that. The Conjuring. A series. I mean, it's a megalith concept created of all the Conjuring films. Scary. Yes, very, very scary. Based on real people, Ed and Lorraine Warren. I did not have the honor to meet them, but I know many, many people who did. I hang with Johnny Zaffis, who's like a nephew of the Warrens, who's trained with them. I work with so many people who knew them. One of my dear friends now runs their museum. So, I mean, these are real people. And here comes this great big, scary horror witch possession movie. Heather, do you want to give us the big outline? I hope it's okay that I always go to you for this, because
no, it's okay. I kind of spent 5 years of my life studying it. So yeah, no, this is 2013. So this is out of the Ghost Witch era. This is after that. We had moved to Hollywood, or I said we have moved on past the Ghost Witches to we went to zombies and to vampires and to other things. And then by 2011, 2012, witches started to come back. And so The Conjuring comes at a time where it's not the ghost witches that are popular, it's witch films that are popular. And it is, Conjuring is it's one of the best ghost witch films, and it's a fantastic horror film. So I agree with everybody saying how much they loved it. I enjoyed it. I've seen it multiple times. And it never fails to, cause fear and fun.
Yeah. Yeah, you can watch it on planes. It's one of those that it's always on the plane. The Conjuring,
it is always
that
on
much of a classic. All right, I'm going to sit here and go to sleep to The Conjuring. And I'm actually also dear friends with Andrea Perron, who was one of the daughters in The Conjuring, who actually lived it. And she says, she's saying the movie isn't exactly her experience. What she says is the movie is the Warrens' perspective and point of view and experience, and hers is her own. But what does that say? Andrea Perron has a 3-part book based on her experience in the house, titled House of Darkness, House of Light. And she's a pretty amazing woman who has made her life about magic and spirituality and in taking all sorts of paths and all sorts of directions. But it kind of made her who she was, these experiences, I do believe.
I love that. Now, this is a movie I actually really love, so I'm not going to be negative this time. And one of the things I really love about The Conjuring is James Wan is a top-notch filmmaker, like a Hollywood elite filmmaker making a horror movie. which doesn't usually happen very often. And the cast is also like completely excellent. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. I'm probably butchering her last name, but I mean, they're great actors. And you can see that all the way through the Conjuring films. Like the quality of the films are like head and shoulders above a lot of other horror, which I think adds to why they're so good.
I agree. And I think that and I don't remember what I was going to say. I agree. Okay, go ahead, Patty.
No, I mean, because it was scary, and you look at people again possessed and not under their own control of life and things like that going on, and then religion gets into it, and spirituality gets into it, and good and evil gets into it. So it had a little bit of everything for everybody, but
and Annabelle.
And Annabelle.
She was right at the beginning, and that fascinates me.
I was always fascinated that Annabelle became the thing that everyone really took to in the film. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have this haunting, you have all the strange things going on in the parent house, and everybody left talking about Annabelle. And the sequels, and we've had 2 Annabelle sequels since the original Conjuring. It's just become like a thing bigger than the rest of the parts of the movie.
Haunted dolls. It's a thing.
Yeah. It's a thing. It's a huge thing. It's all about dolls. I mean, I've never seen dolls more popular in my life, especially amongst 30, 40, 50-something-year-old men. It's like, everybody's got their doll. I talked about it on my other show. It's like, yeah, not every doll's haunted, but it's a thing. And what's more scary? I mean, possessing a vitamin bottle is one thing. Possessing something with eyes and a mouth and ears and a face is a whole different thing.
Absolutely.
Of course, when you look at Annabelle, though, you're like, why would you even keep this in your house? Like, if somebody brought that to my house, my first reaction would be to take it somewhere far away, right? It's really scary. The real Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann doll. So, it's common, which I think makes it scarier. Because you would expect the doll that looks like Annabelle in the movies to, be super scary and possessed by something. You wouldn't expect Raggedy Ann to do that, right?
No.
And
I would want it right in my house. I would have been like, keep it here. I want to watch. I would have had it off. When is it going to come alive? Let's see.
I know. I people sit here and try to pay attention to my, I don't know where Belle moved. Whoa, there we go.
She is.
Yeah. And people catch her moving all the time and catch her doing things. Really, that movie, I hadn't even thought about that, but Annabelle, people talked about, maybe that was the beginning of the haunted doll thing, was it?
Well, Chucky movies predated Annabelle, so, I mean, movie-wise.
Chucky's funny, though. One of the things about Annabelle, though, is you really don't see her move very much, right? And that's what makes it scary. Like, there's the pounding on the door at the beginning of the film after they threw Annabelle in the dumpster, and then they open the door and there's nothing there, and then they go to the bathroom and there's Annabelle sitting there. It's the fact that she doesn't move like Chucky and tell jokes, which I think makes her especially frightening.
I agree. It's the stillness. It's the stillness of a type of movie that of a horror movie. You find that in The Witch. There's a certain amount of stillness that a good filmmaker can evoke that is way creepier than any kind of slasher funny doll thing. Yeah, Poltergeist started the doll scare for me. The clown. Yeah, I got my clown right here. Oops, wrong side. There. What I was going to say about the earlier is that when you were talking about the story of this movie is that it isn't correct and it isn't exactly right. And there's a lot of historical stuff that's wrong, including Bathsheba herself, the supposed ghost witch, because here we have a ghost witch who is supposedly wronged and comes back again to haunt. And Bathsheba herself, the history of her is that she's not even, she supposedly never even lived in that house. So the history of Bathsheba doesn't match the history that's normally told. So this has become its own legend too, with legend tripping. I believe people go to that house, don't they, to go seek out and see whether it's Annabelle or Bathsheba or the ghosts, they actually will go to that house. And so it's become a legend tripping, just like Blair Witch, Bell Witch, etc.
Yeah, I think they do. I think they give tours. I think it is a tourist attraction now of coming to it. So what is the real story of Bathsheba Sherman? Is
Um,
it from that basic area?
Yeah, she's from the area. So if I remember correctly, she was born in the late 1800s, and she was a real person. I believe she was not. The house is in. The house is in Rhode Island, or is the house in? Um, I think she was from Massachusetts. The houses are not. There's slightly different states there, but she was in the area. But they say that history reports that she never lived in that house, but she was in the region. She did not kill anybody. There's no evidence. She's buried with her husband. I think a lot of her kids died early, which is what set the sort of suspicions off. But there's no evidence that she practiced Satanism. There's no evidence that she was a witch. Maybe she practiced some kind of folk magic. A lot of people practiced folk magic back in those days, and it was not called witchcraft. It was called healing or whatever. So there's a there's just it's not it doesn't match up the real history with the story. So the story's taken on a life of its own.
So I was doing my research before we got on the air yesterday, and apparently there was a woman who was hung nearby, and the parent family said that they thought maybe that she was the one who was haunting the house, and not the Bathsheba, not that figure. That was somebody else. But they don't go into that in the Conjuring film, obviously.
I guess we're gonna have to all get Andrea's book and see what they think, or I'll just talk to her next time I see her. I think I'm going to see her in 2 weeks at I think she's actually coming out for Vulture City Paracon in Arizona. So she's coming out west for. Usually it's all the west people go east, and the east people don't often come west, but she's coming west. So we'll have to ask.
But you can definitely see what she said about it being the Warrens' point of view, because it is they were very religious, and everything they did was from their perspective, religiously speaking. So it has that overtone. So witchcraft is not treated as anything but what you would expect the Warrens to treat it. You know, they do the whole exorcism and all of that stuff, and they speak about religion the way Warren would. So it is very much, but it's still good. I don't mind it. It's still so good.
There's a really unsettling line towards the end of the movie where Lorraine is talking to the mother figure, and she says something like, well, demons and witches always want to possess the mother because they want to kill children, because that's what Satan and witches do. It doesn't tonally fit in with the rest of the movie. And it always bothers me, though, because they say that this is based on a real story. And to me, those kind of lines promote Satanic Panic in a way, right? To tell me that this is a real story, and then to say that witches are doing these sort of things or have done these sort of things in the past, I feel is a little problematic. Though I've seen every movie dozens of times and I love them, it's just that there's that line that just always makes me like, why did you have to put that in there? What was the point of that?
I agree, and it is the religion point of view. It is the Catholic. It is that whole perspective that bothers me as well. And then you see somebody else talking about it, and then all of a sudden witches are included with what,
right?
So.
And it's probably they probably expressed that. I would not be surprised if that actually was something they said, they wrote. It's probably accurate. Why the filmmaker chose to leave it in at that day in 2013. He is probably trying to be accurate to the Warrens' perspective, and that is probably very much what they believed. That would be my guess. It is, but for 2013 and the changes we've seen, and like you said, it does promote Satanic Panic. So it is what it is. Just
but
gotta gulp that one down.
Yes. Right.
I've been fascinated with the Warrens for a long time. So, and if you are fascinated with the Warrens, I mean, you're well aware that a lot of the things in The Conjuring don't happen in the way that it's promoted in the movie, right? So, there's major liberties taken. The parent family told the Warrens to leave the house at one point, right? And of course, the Conjuring movie ends with Ed doing the exorcism, and then everything's fine. And in reality, the parents had to live there for several more years because they couldn't afford to move anywhere else. Yeah, so I mean, lots of liberties. They could have left that line out so easily. So easily.
Yeah. Real life doesn't always make a good movie, though, Jason.
It's true. True. I mean, mine would be quite boring. What did he do? Practice witchcraft and drink whiskey. I mean, it would be.
We could try. I'll
Cheers,
start on
everybody.
the script.
Yeah. So, have there been? I mean, I know we're not going off topic because we talk about all sorts of movies. Is there more accurate movies that are going to deal with witches that we could keep the horror or the monster or the ghosty things that were better about witches, like making us not so the bad ones?
There are a few in my mind. I mean, you guys probably have different opinions because I think it depends. But I think that the portrayal of that's the movie I always it's lost on me, the name of it. It'll come to me in a second. But Frankie and Grace and Frankie, she's a witch in that, and that's about as real as just like as real as you can get in a sitcom, in a funny sitcom, in many ways. And then the Last Keepers is also a really nice movie. These aren't horror though. If you're talking about real witches and horror, I guess The Craft has some aspects. I think there's pieces. It's not going to be the whole movie. It's going to be pieces.
Right.
I mean, to me, The Love Witch has some of the most
realistic
rituals that I've ever seen. And there are some unsavory characters, but I've also seen some of those unsavory characters in the witchcraft world. So it really rings true for me in a lot of ways, other than the fact that the Love Witch murders people, which is a problem. I get that.
Small little quirk, yeah, but she's so good. Well, yeah, okay, witches are people. We are people. They're better and lesser, and it's not that we want to be that we of who we are, but it would be interesting to have something where we got to write a movie where it could be a horror movie, it could be scary, it could be this, but maybe the witch saves the day with witchcraft. Somebody write it. It doesn't have to be the Catholic priest saves it. It doesn't have to be holy water. It could be Florida water. It could be.
I think there's opportunities there.
I do too.
I really love the show Evil, which again has a very Catholic bent to it. It's about paranormal investigators through the Catholic Church, and it's a great show. But I always want to tweet at the creators, like, can we have like a witch help them once? There's a Muslim on the team and an atheist on the team and a Catholic priest. Maybe like some witch help in just one episode, make us look good. I think that would be terrific.
Yeah, I think a horror is going to be hard because we have such a legacy of scary witches. And so that's the hard one. But I think there are pieces, like you said. I mean, The Love Witch isn't perfect, but it has pieces, and so does The Craft, which is a horror film, a teen horror. And I Know What You Did Last Summer. There's another one was done in that period of time that has a Wiccan, and she's reading tarot. It's pretty legit in there. She's the main character. So there's a bunch of horror that have pieces. But, we're boring. That's what I always say. I mean, if they did a movie about real witches, it would be, nobody would go watch it. That's a documentary, really.
I don't know.
Yeah. We can talk about it. We'll write a script.
Yeah. Let's write a script. It doesn't have to be boring. So what do we want to think? Okay, so these are three good. We've moved into 2000s, very different than the 90s. Again, you guys are participating beautifully. What's some ideas that we could take? Do we want to keep doing decades? Again, do we want to do good witches versus bad witches? Do we want to do how witchcraft is portrayed in movies? Do we want to talk about again, male witches? We need to do that. And if there is any vampire witch movies or things like that, we want you guys, because this is show you guys are our other person that's part of this. That's why we're doing this live, which is new for many of us. And we're excited by that. So speak up. I think the original Charmed.
That would take like several months for us to just work our way through Charmed. Oh, that was on for years.
The Bell Book and Candle.
Yeah.
Bell, yes, yes. So
The
yeah,
old
these
ones,
are.
the classics.
So maybe we should do a classics day, Hereditary. I don't know that one. Do we know that one? Hereditary?
Yeah, that's a legitimately creepy film, Hereditary.
Really? I missed it. I'm gonna have to watch it. So okay, I'm a massive fan of the movie Hansel and Gretel. It's a fantasy, but take as evil witches and good witches.
The question I have for the Australian warlock is which Hansel and Gretel? Because there's a rash of them. They, Hansel and Gretel is the most retold and told witch story in Hollywood. If you were to count how many times one story is told, and Hansel and Gretel is one that's told almost every decade. More recently, the horror versions of them, and there's some good ones.
Maybe we need to Hansel and Gretel Day.
Maybe we just do a Hansel and Gretel Day. Yes.
Some people obviously like the Hereditary. That keeps popping up. That's good.
Once Upon a Time.
We're definitely going to have to get to the witch, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. My love of goats demands that we get to the witch.
I am with you, Jason. We are going to talk about that and the goat.
Yeah.
Focusing on the.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we did that next week, what would pair up with that?
We can think about that. I don't know. It stands alone. It's such an unusual film. We could definitely Black Phillip. Yep. I don't know. Think about it. We can come up with a few pairs, and we could talk about The Witch, 2000 to late 2000s, or not to late 2000s. Excuse me, 2010s.
Okay. Hereditary was made by the same studio. We can go by studios now. We could do. Thank you, Courtney. She's good at these things. And Courtney, for you guys don't know that, Courtney is our star of Scared and Alone. Same producers as our Rob. And it's, you know how so many of the ghost shows are a team goes in to hunt ghosts, and then there's one person at what they call base camp or whatever who's watching all the stuff. This is absolutely opposite. Courtney goes in all by herself with like one ghost meter in her phone, and then there's a team of people safely in their own homes watching it. So she is very much kind of like Blair Witch Project. So thank you for this jumping in here, Courtney. So you guys have to check that out too. Scared and Alone, also done live, where people could say, "Don't look behind you, Courtney," and scare her. She's got the best scared face of anything.
She's brave.
She is brave. She goes everywhere, all literally by herself. Not by herself, but the film crew you don't see. No, she is literally by herself.
Wow.
So, and she's a witch too. So all right, I'm liking this the witch film because everybody's talking about it. I'm also liking getting the male witches into here, so I don't know if they could be combined together. So maybe we could do something for that next week.
Mm-hmm. We can definitely make one or two shows out of those two subjects. There's plenty of them, plenty of stuff to talk about.
Is it possible just to have a goat themed week? What is your theme this week? Nothing but goats.
We could. Can we? Is there enough, goats. Heather? Is there enough goats?
Are there other goats?
Goats.
Give me a day and I will figure that out. There's got to be goats in other movies.
Yeah.
Other witch goats.
Yeah.
I'm gonna work on that for you, Jason.
Heather knows. Always trust Heather.
always trust Heather. She knows all.
She knows all.
No, I don't. But okay.
She knows a lot.
She knows a lot.
Is that better?
And you remember it much better than some of us. Like, wait, I've been 3 days. I can't remember anymore. So you guys, please like us and follow us. I want everybody to introduce yourself. We have a Facebook page, The Witches, the doll behind you, Patty. Yes. Oh, did she move? Belle moves. That's Belle. She's 105, 106, 7 now. Oh. Very haunted. Yeah, I like dolls. I have even probably scarier. So if I turn the camera around and you see the hundreds and hundreds of my Barbie and Ken, and I have a full witch coven of Barbies. I do. And they're upstairs and downstairs and in every room of the house. So yes, Belle is haunted. You can watch for her. I keep her back there. Otherwise she pulls focus from the rest of us, kind of like animals and kids. Haunted dolls do. So, but she moves around. So thank you for mentioning that. So we have, going back, we have a Facebook page, the Witch's Movie Coven. Go onto it. We'll give you guys homework, what we want to do for next week. We want your opinions of what you do. I think the Instagram was just up there too at Witch's Movie Coven. And so Heather, tell everybody where they can find you and your books and all of that as well.
Great, thank you. So you can see my website, heathergreene.net. That's green with an E. And my website, you can find all my socials and other things I'm doing, including my work as a journalist and my articles, and where you can get my book, which is, of course, all the big retailers. So just check me out there. I'm most active on Twitter. So if you want to get a hold of me and you want to see what I'm more action, my action and my daily things I'm thinking about, go to Twitter. That's where I spend most of my time.
Thank you. And Jason?
I'm one of 4 Jason Mankeys in the entire country. So if you just Google me, I show up everywhere, much to the chagrin of the other 3 Jasons. I'm on all the major social media platforms. And I write for Llewellyn, which means my books are available at every quality bookseller. If my book is not at your favorite witch store, maybe it's not a quality bookseller. No, I don't mean that.
Okay, and panmonkey.com, there's your website right there. I'm just reading right here. You didn't give me your website. All the social media, so thank you. I am Patti Negri. I also am everywhere. PattiNegri.com is my website, and you can get to all my legitimate Facebook, Instagram, it's Patti.Negri. Facebook, it's Patti Negri, Psychic Medium, the only place I am verified for whatever reason. Twitter, Patti Negri. And of course, don't miss the Witching Hour, which drops on Mondays. I'm so glad you did too. Come back every week. You're going to be our lead player, Australian Warlock. We love it. I want to talk about, so PattiNegri.com, come to the Witching Hour, everywhere you get podcasts, and on YouTube, and on my YouTube. You guys, we're going to put all this everywhere, and the Witch's Movie Coven too. And hopefully we're going to get this up on Paraflix and everywhere else that you want. In Europe, boy witches are warlocks without any negativity. I have that. And I'm sure that's true in Australia too, right? Australian warlock. Because I have some very much Italian witch friends, Wiccans actually, and he just could not understand being called a witch by anything, and there's nothing negative to it. So again, it's a word is a word is a word, and every place has different ideas. So, and on that note, this is the Witch's Movie Coven. Thank you guys. I'm glad we caught it live too. And if you didn't catch it live, you guys can always watch it later or tell your friends if you liked it. Thank you, Rob and Christine of Co-Conspiracy Entertainment, for making all our little heads working together and putting on these great words and putting us together and brilliant ideas all the way along. So I don't know. Any last words? What do we want to do this week?
Oh, sign off?
Sign off? Cackle?
Wrinkle our nose?
Wow.
Happy Equinox to everybody.
Oh, yes.
Oh my gosh. Today.
Right.
Yes. It is the equinox. For those of you catching it today, it is the autumnal equinox. Happy this day, a day to celebrate, and it's my wedding anniversary. So we got married we did a big old hand fasting. It was fabulous in my backyard. So thank you. I forget we're live. I'm so used to not being live when we tape these things. We're live. So happy equinox. Samhain's coming. All sorts of fun things are coming. Maybe we could do like theme. Is there any Halloween witchy movies that are witchy? I don't know. Samhain. We've got so much to do, you guys. So many movies, so little time. So, all right. Are we going to cackle again? We got to come up with a sign off, you guys.
I love the cackling.
Okay. And we want you guys out there to cackle. Hi, Amber. Hi, everybody. Yeah. So,
cackle
okay. On the count of 3, we're going to cackle with us because then we won't feel so silly. Okay. Bye, Tim. Bye, everybody. Here we go. That's the Witch's Movie Coven. Now go get your popcorn. Forgot our popcorn. Next week, popcorn.